Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we're here to talk some Sooner football, guys. It is football time in Oklahoma. I've always wanted to do that, by the way. Grew up on it, and now getting to do it is awesome. But it's game week, Parker. Are you excited? Because I know I am. We got to watch football last week in high school. Some big games.
We got to watch a little bit of college football, largely meaningless college football, but there was one outcome in particular that was very fortuitous for Oklahoma, but we'll get around to that. I am excited.
You're not talking about Malachi Coleman, are you?
Okay, well, you had to let the cat out of the bag right off the bat. Come on.
No, we'll talk about it later. Just leave them dangling until we do talk.
Okay, sure. But no, I am excited. I'm excited for college football to really begin because, you get the appetizer in week 0, but once week 1 rolls around, it really is upon us. And I think we're fortunate, as we are every year in week 1, to have some really big games on the non-conference slate early. You look at Oregon, Georgia. That's going to be an interesting one because nobody knows Georgia better than Dan Lanning. So I think Oregon is poised to give the defending national champs all they can handle in that one. You got Notre Dame, Ohio State. You got what I think is a really intriguing one in Cincinnati, Arkansas. For Oklahoma, it's an opener that they should win handily against UTEP. Then again, they should have won their opener handily last year. So I think right off the bat here, we're going to get to see a very tangible difference, if indeed there is one, between the Brent Venables era Sooners and the Lincoln Riley era Sooners, assuming that Oklahoma takes care of business the way that they should take care of business this coming Saturday.
Yeah. You know what I think is going to happen? Let me tell you what I think is going to happen this weekend.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm excited to see physical, gritty line play. And I think we're going to see it. I do. I feel it. I feel it in my loins. I feel it in my loins, Parker.
I assume you're talking offensive line here more so than defensive line?
Both.
Okay, love it.
My loins swing both. No, I can't say that, actually.
Yeah, you cannot say that.
But seriously, went a little too far in that joke. Anyways, but my point is that with Schmitty back as the strength and conditioning coach, I just have a gut feeling that we're going to see that gritty line play that we even saw during some rough times under Mike Stoops. Like, they were gritty on the O-line. The D-line had its moments, like where they were just nasty at times, particularly in 2013, 14, and 15. And I know they lost a lot of games in 2014. 5 games is a lot at Oklahoma, or 4. It's 5, right? It was
5. They were 8-5.
Yeah. But they were gritty. They played tough. Like, there was just a toughness about it that Stoops, and it was lost. So much finesse, so much. And I want to say it wasn't always not gritty, because I thought the first few years when there was a residual of Schmitty still left around, guys that went through his strength and conditioning for majority of their years at Oklahoma, there was still that grittiness. But like after 2019, it was done. It was done. 2020, 2021, you didn't see a lot of that grittiness. You saw a lot of finesse. You saw a lot of delays. You saw a lot of slow developing plays. You saw a lot. I mean, it just wasn't the same downhill, get down your throat on either side of the ball that you saw when Schmitty was around. And he's not calling the plays, but he's developing that mentality during the offseason. And then you add a coach in Brent Venables that has that type of mentality onto it. This is going to be grit, man. You're going to have a lot of that Memphis Grizzly back in 2011, 2012, 2013, that grit and grind. I'm talking grit and grind stuff that they did back then. We need some white flags. The OU fans need some white flags to be waving during it. And they wave those yellow flags, or what do they call the terrible towels or whatever they had that they did at Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah, the terrible towels. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a joke, but seriously, like I think you're going to get that. And I think that has people excited to see that type of football again because, it's fun to watch long passes and big plays and all that type of stuff. But there's something about being tough on the defensive line that is just a beautiful to watch. It is. It's beautiful.
I agree. And I think one of the things that we've talked about time and again on both sides of the ball with Oklahoma historically, and it's just as true in 2022 as it's ever been, is elite play for an entire unit starts up front, whether that's on the offense or on the defense. And the Sooners' most prolific offenses in school history have always had a common denominator. And you can argue there are several common denominators, but one of them is outstanding offensive line play. And similarly, when the Sooners have been elite on the defensive line in years past, they've put together some pretty good defenses. And you rewind to the Gerald McCoy days, for instance. That was a time where Oklahoma was one of the better defensive programs in the country, and it started up front. So if you do have your trench warriors on both sides of the football playing at an elite level, and they are Schmitty built, and they are not only strong, but they are well conditioned, and they're able to not just play at an elite level for a quarter or two, but maintain that level of play for an entire 60 minutes, then what you're going to see, whether that's in 2022 or further down the line, regardless, you're going to see Oklahoma start playing championship level football. And that's not something that I think we have truly seen from Oklahoma in several years, dating probably back to the first half of that 2019 season. That was the last time they were truly playing championship level football. They've played good football since then, but I wouldn't quantify it as championship level. That's the level you have to be playing at if you expect to go toe to toe with the likes of Alabama and Ohio State this year. And I'm not saying Oklahoma does that in 2022. I'm not saying they need to do that in 2022. You're setting very lofty expectations at that point for Brent Venables' first season as a head coach. But I don't think it will take long for the Sooners to return to that level, just based on the type of play that I think we're going to see on the defensive front as well as on the offensive line.
No, I agree. I think that it's just gonna happen. We saw a little bit of it during the spring game. You saw a little bit of that grittiness, that attitude on both sides of the ball, and I think you're further going to see that because now you're more into it. Venables has had not just 15 days to really, supplant his hand on the players. He's had 30 days, and you add another 3 or 4 months of Schmitty on top of that, and you've got to have something come of that. And I think you will. I think you'll see it. And I think the overreaction that people are going to have is we're all going to do it no matter how Oklahoma plays. If they play bad, if they play good, there's going to be a massive overreaction one way or the other. I think last year there was a huge overreaction after the Tulane game, right? Like everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're so bad. They're not going to be able to compete for anything. They were competing for the Big 12 title to the last game of the season and had Riley not had one foot out the door. So it was never as bad as the doom and gloomers said it was. It was never as good as the sunshine pumpers said it was. It was somewhere in the middle last year, and somehow they ended up 11-2. And Venables is taking a hold of a program that has either won the Big 12 or won double-digit games since 2015. Like, that's 7 straight seasons. It's not like Bob Stoops when he took the program. That program was what, 5-6 the year before or something to that extent. And they went 7-5 the next year, his first year, then 13-0 the next year. Barry Switzer, nobody wants to talk about that. When he took over the program, yeah, they won. But similarly, they had lost a lot of players going into his first season. I think it was 73 was the first year he was head coach. They lost a lot of players. They were young, but they were super talented. And I see a lot of similarities between that team and this team. And I see a lot of similarities between how he's recruiting or he recruited and how Venables is recruiting. And we'll get to the recruiting part here later, folks. But it's game week, so we're going to talk a little game week football. So my point is that it's never as good as everybody thinks it is after game 1 or 2, and it's never as bad as everybody thinks it is after game 1 or 2. I mean, after the Rice game in 2000, nobody expected Oklahoma to compete. As a matter of fact, everybody's like, oh my gosh, they have Texas next week. How are they going to be able to compete with Texas? How? And they went down and just buried him. I almost said what I said last week, and I caught myself.
Good. I'm glad you caught yourself.
But they did do that. Yeah, I mean, you can't deny that. So my point is like, let's see how the first 3, 4, 5 games play out before you go and say, oh my gosh, this team is this, or yeah, this team is going to win a national title. Like, suppress your emotions one way or the other and see how everything plays out going into conference before you get all up in arms of what's going on, because there's going to be some bumps in the road one way or the other. I don't know when, but it's going to happen.
It'll happen. And that's the understanding that you have to have, is that, yeah, look, it's encouraging the direction that this program is headed, but they're not going to have it all figured out this season. And they're not going to have it all figured out when you'd like for them to have it all figured out. They will have moments. Every team, no matter how well coached they are, they're going to have moments where they don't play to their full potential. And it seems, even for a fleeting moment, if that, that they are not only mortal, but not nearly as good as advertised. It happened to Alabama last year in College Station. Right? You think about the team that won the national title last year, Georgia. They got boat raced by Alabama in the SEC championship game. So it's not going to be. I've heard so many people compare this 2022 team to the 2000 team that won a national championship. Well, nobody thought they were going to go and do what they did that year either. Listen, please keep expectations reasonable. This is not the 2000 team. It's not. And that is an unfair expectation and an unfair standard to place upon this program and this team and Brent Venables as a head coach. Am I saying they can't win a lot of games in 2022? No. But what I am saying is, to have the belief that they're going to run roughshod over the Big 12 and the rest of college football like they did in 2022, it's not really. How do I phrase this properly? I think the potential's there, sure, but you have to draw the distinction between potential and rational expectations. And for the Sooners in 2022, you have to have a healthy understanding of the fact that there are still, you're still dealing with a defense that is drinking from a fire hose, learning Brent Venables' system, and they're becoming more comfortable with it, but it's a constant work in progress. And with a defense as intricate as Venables is, and with a mind as bright as his is, and as tuned in to the nature of the game, and as reactive as he can be as a defensive coordinator, not just in game, but throughout the season as well. They're going to be, I would imagine they'll be installing new looks each and every week. And it will be a constant evolution throughout the season defensively. And similarly, on the offensive side of the ball, you know, it's probably a little bit easier to learn a new system on the offensive side versus the defensive side. But there will be times where they struggle to move the ball. There will be times where Dylan Gabriel doesn't have the same touch that he usually displays, there will be times when the Sooners go up against a really good defensive team. You saw this for Ole Miss last year in the bowl game against Baylor, right? That was Jeff Lebby's offense, but it kind of ran into a brick wall when you're up against as creative of a defensive mind and as capable of a defensive mind as Dave Aranda. So it's not going to be all sunshine and roses this year, and people need to understand that. But what I do think you're going to see a drastic reduction in is dumb football. The Sooners are not going to play nearly as much dumb football as they have in years past, because they have a coaching staff that has set the expectations high for them, and not just set the expectations high in terms of their play on the field, but in terms of the way that they carry themselves, in terms of the way that they interact with each other, in terms of the way that they hold each other accountable on the football field. This is going to be a much better coached team than they have been over the last several years. And it just depends on how much that manifests in the game-to-game results, because you can be well coached and you can still fall short of expectations. We saw that at Clemson last year, right? They finished 9-3 at the end of the regular season in a weak ACC. You don't know what you're going to get, and we can prognosticate all we'd like, but you don't know what you're going to get with Oklahoma in 2022. And so at this point, you got to be content to just let it ride. The season is here. It's going to be a fun one. It's a wide open Big 12. And to a larger extent, it seems as though you have some wide open races and wide open paths to the college football playoff, because I think everybody's taking Alabama and Ohio State for granted. We'll see if that's justified over the next few weeks. And for Ohio State, particularly in week 1 against a really good Notre Dame team, what I expect to be a really good Notre Dame team. But beyond those two teams, even look at Georgia, the defending national champions, which is with as much as they lost on defense, there's a very viable path to the college football playoff for a lot of football teams in 2022. Yep. And it's all going to boil down to who takes advantage of their opportunities and who demonstrates that they have essentially the exact opposite of what Nebraska has right now. And I hate to throw Nebraska fans under the bus, but this
no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
This is what matters.
You love it.
In this era of college football is having a winning culture, being able to go and win football games. When your back is against the wall, are you going to be able to make the play? Are you going to be able to come up with a stop? Are you going to be able to move the chains? Whatever it looks like, that's the mark of a championship caliber football team. And I think we're going to see flashes of that for Oklahoma in 2022. And you look like you want to jump in here.
Yeah, well, because you started quoting the Boys of Fall song.
I did? What song?
The wall. Yes.
Oh, boy.
The Boys of Fall. You know, the Kenny Chesney song? That's like literally the only country song I know.
No, I don't know any country songs, Brandon. I'm not a country music
I don't either.
Person
That's
at all, so.
Me either. But as the one thing I do know, because I've seen the documentary, and if you haven't, you should watch it. It's freaking awesome. Like it makes your hair stand up on your arms. Like if you played football as a little kid, you get it. Like you get the Boys of Fall that they're talking about, because they have all these. I know I'm totally digressing, because you quoted the song, like literally word for word there for a second when you said the back's up against the wall. And it's like takes one, you got us all type stuff.
Okay.
So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No,
I just started singing it in my head.
To tie a bow on it, what I'm getting at with this thought is basically, I just hope sooner, and I know this is not a reasonable expectation, because fans by nature, not just Oklahoma fans, but fans by nature are unreasonable. But I hope that the well-informed contingent of the Sooner fan base, which constitutes the majority of our VIP member contingent at OUinsider.com, the folks that have stayed up to date with our team notes and depth chart analysis and everything that we've been putting out through the offseason. I hope that the well-informed fan is willing to proceed into the 2022 season without expectations that are too lofty. because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, you're still talking about a team that has a first-year head coach and that has undergone a lot of change this offseason. And so if they can win as many games as we expect them to win as we look at this schedule, it's a highly successful year one for Brent Venables. And if they fall short of those expectations, you know what? It's okay, because as we'll get to in a bit more detail later on, the way that the Sooners are recruiting right now, in particular, having a remotely successful year one for Brent Venables and this staff is going to set the table for some really special things 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
No, I'm with you. Okay, so I think there's an interesting thing you brought up about fan expectations and just the unreasonableness, but at the same time, I think the expectation now, and I think, what am I trying to word this right? What you're going to see on Saturday is something we haven't seen for a game like UTEP ever at Oklahoma. And I'm talking about the atmosphere. Like the atmosphere at Oklahoma and how they're going to go about. I think you take on the fans will take on the personality of their coach. And what we know is from Brent Venables is that he's outgoing, he's loud, he's flamboyant, he's just out there all the time, right? Like he's in your face, loud, obnoxious, just and he's a perfectionist. And I think you're going to see that mentality from the fan base. Not, and I'm not saying like they're going to expect perfection. I'm saying on defense, I think this crowd is going to be louder than we've seen it for a game of UTEP stature than we've ever seen in our lifetime. And it's because of everything Oklahoma fans have gone through for the last 9 months. The expectations that have been just, I guess, undermined by national people over and over and over. And it's gotten to the OU fan base. Like they're pissed. They feel so belittled. They feel so, I guess, scorned, obviously, by Muleshoe. They feel it all. And I think that is going to come out. You saw a little bit of it during the spring game, right? I think you see it all. And I think you see it all throughout the whole season because they're going to feel like they have been unjustly criticized for how they felt about Riley, how they have reacted to things. They're going to feel excitement at the same time for Brent Venables and what he's bringing. They're going to love the product on the field because it's exciting. They're going to be throwing a lot of deep balls in Levy's offense. You're going to see a lot of big runs because that's what they do. You're going to see hitting, like just gritty, lay your ass out hitting. Like that is what's going to happen because of who they have as coach and who they have as the strength and conditioning coach. And I think you're going to see that just resonate through the fan base. And it has resonated. If you're on Twitter, if you're on any social media, you see the excitement. I think you're going to have 70, 80-year-olds up there just acting like they're 40 or 50 again because they're that excited about the product they feel like they're going to see on the field. And it's going to be loud. You add the fact that it's probably going to be 90 degrees and not 105 like it usually is on kickoff that day. It's a perfect storm for that crowd to just be ridiculous. And then I think stripe the stadium against Kent State. I think that's going to be another one. If they come back home against Kansas State 3-0, that game is going to be something to behold as far as the OU fans, because I think they're going to be just ruckus all season. I do. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and at that point, like people are going to start to draw parallels again because they can't help themselves but draw parallels between 2022 and 2000. Exactly. They're going to start talking about Red October again. They will. And so at that point, if you're 3-0 and you get past Kansas State and you're rolling into October 4-0, heading down to M&G Carter Stadium to take on TCU for your first conference road game, that's what people are going to start talking about. It's inevitable.
Yep. No, it is. I got to tell you. By the way, just to not, Colton Yarborough and Zadavian Sims are going to be at Oklahoma this weekend. Per Sean Cooper, he just texted me, and then he tweeted it after he texted me. So, anyways, so yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm super excited about that because, of course, I'm in the press box. You're down on the field. You actually get to feel the excitement. I have to raise up my window to kind of feel things, but it's it. I'm not going to because it's gonna be hot. I'll let you take the heat. I'm gonna sit in the air conditioning. So yeah, you and Caroline can have you and Caroline can have that heat all you want, buddy. You guys can have it all, bro.
There's no way it can be worse than Tulane last year.
No,
there's absolutely no way.
That was miserable. People, and I'm joking about the air conditioner. People don't understand, like, that window that I sit front row, like 30-yard line, 40, 50-yard line, usually depends on how it's lined up. And I'm telling you, like, my computer almost overheats all the time because that one you've set up there before, that window is scorching hot. It just like magnifies the heat on you. It sucks. But anyways, yeah, I'm excited about that. I think that's probably the outside of the team. I'm excited to see how the fans react, and I think it's going to be a fun atmosphere on Saturday. Let's move on to, well, as I pull up our list of topics here, what stood out? A lot of media days this week. We had well, it was 2 media days, but we had a lot of sessions. One in the morning with the coaches, and one in the evening on Monday and Tuesday. What stood out to you? I think I know one thing that stood out to me, but what stood out to you? There wasn't a lot really said.
No,
yeah.
there really wasn't. And, it was kind of the same old with Brent Venables in particular. Everybody, when he came out for his first press conference of fall camp, everybody was remarking on how docile his demeanor was and how he didn't seem to be as ostensibly exuberant
He's
as
tired.
he typically
He's
is.
tired.
But yeah, you can tell, like, these guys have been grinding. You can see it in their faces. You can see it in their body language. They are exhausted, and they've been through a lot this fall camp. And as you look back on what Brent Venables said right before they went out to the rugby fields, he said, this should be the most challenging stretch of our season. And so I feel like that is in line with what the coaching staff's expectation was. And I feel like if that's truly where they are right now, then that's probably for the best heading into the season opener against UTEP. You want these guys to have felt like the most grueling portion of the season is behind them. And from here on out, they're just going out on Saturdays and having fun. That's the dynamic you want to cultivate, I think, because at that point in time, you will have cultivated a culture within your locker room, and the Sooners have, where there's a ton of accountability, but there's also a ton of togetherness. And so I think if you go into the season with the expectation that, hey, look, we did everything we could to break you guys. Now it's time for you guys to go and break everybody else. That's where you want to be at as a football program heading into the season. And the Sooners get a couple tune-ups against UTEP and Kent State. So, you know what? If they're not, if they're a little worn out physically in week 1, that's probably okay, because UTEP doesn't have the horses to run with them anyway. And the Sooners aren't going to have to try very hard to dominate that football game, particularly up front. But by the time September 17th rolls around against Nebraska, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road for this season, really. And I think I honestly do believe they could get a little bit more of a challenge than they anticipate from Kent State on September 10th. That is a program that's headed in the right direction under head coach Sean Lewis. And They have some talent on that roster. I'm not saying Oklahoma's on upset watch by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they'll get a reasonably competitive football game from Kent State. September 17th is this team's first true litmus test, though. And so you get 2 weeks of tune-ups until the meat and potatoes of your schedule really arrives. And now that the Sooners have been through the grind of fall camp and they've come out the better for it, now we turn our attention to what's going to happen on Saturdays. And again, going back to the conversation with which we started this podcast, people are going to be inclined to overreact, for better or worse, to the UTEP game and to the Kent State game. Hold your fire, keep your opinions, and keep the discourse rational and reasonable until we get to game 3. And at that point, we're gonna find out what this team is made of, and we're gonna find out if all the work that they have put in throughout the offseason, and particularly in the month of August, is going to manifest itself into great success on the football field, because they're going to have success one way or another. But what does success look like in year 1? Again, we don't know. I think we'll start to see when they go up to Lincoln.
Yeah, I agree. But I thought the most interesting thing was when he talked about Justin Harrington. He said, people keep telling me that he's a way better attitude than before I arrived, like they keep saying he's not the same person. And I thought that was interesting because the Justin Harrington you and I know is the same person we talked to today. So there had to have been a lot of just, and obviously this is a rhetorical statement, right? Like this is the most obvious thing ever. And he quit the team after week 4 last year. So that there was some distrust, some anger towards the previous staff. But then when Harrington came out and said, but this is Oklahoma, I love Oklahoma, I've always wanted to be a part of it, I committed to Oklahoma because of what that program stood for, not the other coaches. And so when Venables allowed him back, he says he tells him thank you every day. Thank you so much. Even after meetings, he says, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Like you can see the gratitude that he has for this staff, in particular, Brandon Hall and Brent Venables. Like he loves those two. And we got to see it when we were out there in practice, like the way that he is just so engaged and everything. And look, I know that, he's backing up Deshaun White, but I've talked to some people. Don't read into that, folks. Do not read into the depth chart all the way, because he will play some free safety. He will play some cheetah, nickel, whatever you want to call it. And he will play some corner. Like he's going to play everywhere. They've thrown him out. He's made mistakes during practice. That has happened because of everything he's been through and all the positions they've thrown him into. But he's still going to be that guy. Like they expect him to be a big time NFL draft pick before it's all said and done. And I think this is where it all starts for him, obviously. I thought the other thing was interesting when I asked about the depth chart and what he thought about the front 4. Like we see the front 4 and we're like, dang, man, that's a talented front 4, right? That's some talented depth. They're good. Venables said, we're still working some kinks out on the pass rush. And I thought that was kind of, I think he's trying to downplay how good they might be, to be honest. He doesn't want people to see. And I think he wants to temper the expectation. I think he's trying to give them a challenge. I think that was a statement made to challenge his front 4 more than anything else. So I thought those were the two most interesting things, because I tried to get the Wanye Morris stuff out of him. Parker can vouch for this. I asked, and then I asked again, because I tried what I said about depth. I said, what about depth on the offensive line and D line? And I was trying to get him to say, well, we're going to see Tyler Guyton a lot this week, blah, 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 and kind of start hinting towards the Wanye Morris stuff. He didn't budge. There was no budging going on.
Should have just kept following up the follow-up. And like, so what about right tackle specifically? So what about Wanya Morris? BV did not take the bait. He did
No,
not
he
take the
didn't.
bait.
He took no bait. And I was like, I remember I talked to you. We were talking on the way down. I was like, dang, dude, I tried twice, and he was not taking it. And then obviously today, I don't know where it came from. I got a text message that said, "Oh, so people are report." Well, I do know where it came from because I asked. I said, "Who reported it?" And so the only person I know that would reported it. So and good for them because we stayed as far away from it as we could on purpose. We're talking about one name Morris, obviously. He's likely to be out 2 games, suspended. Sooner Scoop reported it first. I was I had notes dropping today on VIP. I got a bunch of source notes. I was going to hint towards Tyler Guyton playing a lot, but I wasn't going to name why because when it comes to stuff of academics and legal things, we try to stay as far away from it as we possibly can at times, unless we have to address it. And now that it's out there, we have to address it. So, he's had some academia problems from what we've heard, and he's had some landlord problems, obviously, from the legal report that's out there, the OSCN. I think it's OCSN. Is that what it's called? OCSN report. I think that's what it is. What it's
I
Oklahoma,
don't know.
Oklahoma County, something. Whatever. But be that as it may, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like the landlord stuff is meaningless, and we don't know if the academic stuff is grades. We don't know if it's he didn't go to class like he was supposed to on multiple occasions. I mean, that type of stuff BV doesn't put up with. And he's told us that if a kid doesn't go to class, he's going to get a few chances, then he's going to get discipline. And the discipline may be you've done it multiple times during the summer, you've done it once or twice during the fall already. Now you're going to sit out a few games and learn your lesson, show up to freaking class or something. And I'm just throwing scenarios out there because we don't know the scenario. We don't know the 100% the reasoning of the academic reasoning that we've heard. So, Parker, you want to comment on all this? Because I know you've heard the same stuff I have.
Well, we're gonna find out real quick.
It's out there. It's out there.
Yeah.
So we can comment now.
I don't want to get deep into the weeds on the Morris situation specifically, but I'll say this: we're about to find out what all the hype was about with Tyler Guyton, because we heard a lot of positive buzz about him throughout fall camp and even previously in the offseason. Same thing with Jake Sexton as well, because he was listed as the backup to Wanya Morris at right tackle.
He's gonna play. He's gonna play,
and he will play. Absolutely. It's going to be super cool too. And I would imagine Guyton draws the start at right tackle on Saturday, but how cool would it be if Jake Sexton hears his name called with the starting lineup, his very first game as an Oklahoma Sooner, especially for a kid from Edmond, Oklahoma. I think that's that would be a super cool moment. But either way, you're going to get to see what both of those two guys look like. And I remember having a conversation with one individual close to the program in early August, very beginning of fall camp. And if this isn't a direct quote, it's pretty close to it. But this individual had told me, Jake Sexton looks like a good enough player that if we needed him to, he could play. And he made he followed that up by saying, look, obviously our best laid plans are probably not to roll out a true freshman at offensive tackle. We'd like those guys to be Anton Harrison and Wanya Morris. But if we needed Jake Sexton to play, he could play. Well, guess what? The Sooners need him to play now over what looks like will be these first 2 games of the season. So you'd figure that Guyton's going to get quite a few reps at right tackle, and you'd figure that Big Sexy is going to get a few reps at offensive tackle. So,
Big Sexy.
We're going to see about it. And hey, I will add this. My expectation right now is that Wanya Morris is going to be the Sooners starting right tackle when they go up to Nebraska on September 17th. But if you leave the door open for your competition, even slightly, and particularly in the season with something like this, there's always the chance that you get supplanted. So who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe Tyler
that's already been
Guyton
a
or Jake
question.
Sexton. Yeah, maybe one of those two takes this opportunity and runs with it. That's
Yeah,
on the table
that's
as
already
well.
been a that's already been a question on my. I started my VIP chat on our VIP board today, and that was literally like the third question. How long does it take Morris to resupplant Guyton? Does he ever do it? And I was like, all right. So everybody's already moving on. They have confidence in Guyton already. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do now. Like you've lost depth at the tackle position. You've had to move Guyton as your backup left tackle over to your starting right tackle. You got Sexton backing him up. Do you slide Savion Bird from guard to tackle? I mean, how do you do that? Does Jake Taylor move over a little bit? I mean, what how they have a backup now for left and right tackle, I think is going to be interesting because it, you've lost some depth there. You've pretty much moved a piece off the board by suspended Wanya Morris.
Yeah, but this is where Bill Bedenbaugh's recruiting philosophy comes into play, right?
Yeah,
He almost exclusively recruits guys who can play multiple positions on the
multiple.
offensive line,
Mhm.
and he develops guys uh, towards a specific direction such that they will be able to play multiple positions on the offensive line if their number is called. Obviously, Jake Taylor and Savion Bird are two guys that have played a lot of offensive tackle when you rewind to their high school careers, but they're not the only guys among that group that are going to have the ability to slide in at tackle if the situation calls for it. And look, I think at the end of the day, barring injury, you're probably not going to see anybody running with the first team at offensive tackle outside of Guyton and or Jake Sexton while Morris is on the shelf. But this is, I mean, whenever we have a conversation about depth on the offensive line, this is what it kind of always ties back to. This is why Bill Bedenbaugh recruits and develops the way that he does, is because you get a situation like this, you have answers. And sometimes the answers are a little bit unconventional. Moving Tyrese Robinson out to right tackle last year was a bit of an unconventional move, but
Yeah.
Bedenbaugh can do that. He's got that luxury because of the way he does business.
Yeah, no, he Beanbo, the way he's recruited over the years, Cody Ford is a prime example. I think Cody Ford, I think Tyrese Robinson are prime examples of this because of how they played and the positions they played. They played everywhere. I'm trying to think of somebody else that's done that for him over the years. Like that's been like a big name. Those two are probably the biggest names I can remember sliding in and out of guard and tackle and being
Eric
very
Swenson.
successful at.
Eric
Eric
Swenson
Swenson
did
was
it quite
another
a
one.
bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I said being very successful.
Okay.
Sorry, bro. I'm not meaning like Swenson was a good player. He wasn't Tyrese Robinson or Cody Ford, though.
No, he was not. That is fair.
Okay, there we go. But anyways, the depth chart reaction. Let's get into that. Since we're talking about that. Nice little segue there. Look, man, I have a bunch coming, folks, on OUinsider.com. I mean, a bunch coming as far as team source notes for y'all. I've been ever since the depth chart's been out, I've been making calls, I've been talking to people. I will report what I can report and say what I can say that I'm allowed to say from people. And it's going to be on OU Insider VIP. So, and we're doing a promo right now, $26. Get you a year of OU Insider and all 250 VIP sites on 24/7 Sports. I think that's a heck of a deal, Parker. And I'm not. I would do it if I wasn't a member, just because it's $26. You're going to spend more than that at the gas station, literally. And if you don't want to do that and you want to spend more throughout the year, you can go $1 for the first month and then $9.95 afterwards if you want to give us a try out. But you can't upgrade. You can't upgrade until we have an upgradable promo, and those don't come on often. Most of the time, you're stuck in that limbo of month to month. So if you get to take advantage of this $26, I would. I'm just saying, I would. I would. I mean, we've grown, I think in the last 4 months, like 1,700 members or something like that. It's been stupid, dude. Stupid. And Parker's the reason why. I'm gonna give him all the credit. Parker's the man on that. Give Parker the credit for it. No, the
Hey,
whole team's really good. The whole team's really good. It's been fun.
do I deserve all the credit? No, but I'll take all the credit if you want to give it all to me.
I would too. No, the whole team, like awesome. Joey, Parker, myself, Brian Bishop's in there. And our national team, you get to talk to the national team. You get to ask the national guys question. Do you want to talk to Steve Wiltfong? You got to be on OU Insider. Like that's the man, the GOAT. He'll tell you everything you need to know.
No doubt.
Andrew
He's already
Ivins,
been on our
Brandon
board
Huffman.
this morning. Fong has.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. You've got Wiltfong, Andrew Ivins, Brandon Huffman, Greg Biggins, Brian Doan, Alan True. Help me here. Who's the Mountain West guy in Hawaii?
Blair Angulo.
Blair Angulo. Gabe Brooks. I mean, these guys are on our boards every day, bringing notes on recruiting, bringing information they've heard nationally to you guys. We bring team notes every stinking day. You have a team, something you won't find anywhere else. You have a note every day, team and recruiting every day. You don't have to wait Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like a lot of places do. You don't have to do Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, like a lot of places do. I've seen it throughout the years, but before I even got in this business, a lot of people have a regimen only doing it 3 or 4 times a week. We do it every day. You have a note every day, and they're lengthy, and we take pride in that. And we take pride in being the most honest and most open members and media people that we can be. Like we do spaces for you guys. We do YouTube lives to answer questions for you all because we want you to be able to feel like you've gotten to know Parker and myself. So we hope you take advantage of that. We love and thank you guys so much. You OU fans are amazing. And so, yeah, that's our mid podcast promo. Thank you all so much though, for real. Like it's been a blessing to be able to cover OU for y'all, and we can't wait to do it all season. But back to the depth chart real quick, man. What stood out to you the most? Like what stood out like outside? I know you're going to say Sawchuk not being on the top 4 of the running backs.
No, I thought that's what you were going to say.
Well, I am, but I think the obvious reasoning is because he was hurt the last 2 weeks, and hamstrings aren't anything you play with. I mean, if put you like this, if the fall ended at the beginning, which it can't, but if it did, right, of camp, Sawchuk would be ahead of Barnes because Barnes had a nagging hamstring for the first couple of weeks.
It's true.
So I mean, it's just because at one point Sawchuk had the most workload out of any running back for like the first 3 weeks of camp, and then bam, that workload caught up to him. He pulled his hammy, and it's been nagging him since, and it's been an up and down deal for him. But he is going to be a star, and I bet he gets carries on Saturday still, regardless of where he is on the depth chart. I bet he gets carries.
I think
he's too much of a blazer. Yeah, he's too much of a blazer, man. The guy can fly. I think. What do you think of Aaron Parks? Like, we haven't heard his name. He's on the depth chart at left tackle. He has all the potential in the world. But we keep seeing people jump him when they show up.
Yeah. Well,
have you heard there's like a commitment issue or like anything like that like going on with him?
He's not a guy that gets talked about a lot when you talk to folks close to the program, which it is what it is. There are guys like that, and they end up being depth guys, and that's what Aaron Parks has been and will probably continue to be for Oklahoma at this rate. I think what stood out to me most, well, here's the thing. What stood out to the general public most, I would say, is Jordan Kelly being listed as a co-starter alongside Jalen Redmond. And people were freaking out about that, right? Because they look at Jalen Redmond and what he brings to the table, and they're probably going to say, how on earth is this guy a co-starter with anybody? Why on earth has he not seized the job? when he was a 5-star recruit. He led the team in sacks in 2019. When he's healthy, everybody's been talking about what a monster he has the potential to be. Why doesn't he have a starting gig locked down? And much like Gavin Sawchuk, Jalen Redmond was banged up in the month of August throughout fall camp, which, again, that's not the kind of thing you see. That's not the kind of thing you're mindful of unless you are tuned in to what's happening during fall camp, throughout fall practice, on OUinsider.com VIP. That's how you knew that Jalen Redmond being listed as a co-starter with Jordan Kelly. Well, I guess that's how you knew why it happened. Because Jordan Kelly has been that dude all offseason. And that was something we were hearing, Brandon, as early as
Mr.
February or March, was that hey, Jordan Kelly has made some big strides. So his growth, combined with the fact that Redmond has been banged up a little bit, is the reason why those two are listed as co-starters on the defensive line. I'll add a couple things that are not surprising if you are a VIP on OUinsider.com. Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, and R. Mason Thomas in the 2 deep. No surprise there. Those three have been among the most impressive, if not the most impressive, true freshmen on the entire roster.
And Halton. Those two
Kelvin Gilliam and Halton are both on the depth chart at defensive tackle. Yes. How about Jake McCoy? Edmonds.
We've talked about it. We talked about it on OU Insider.
Which obviously that's due in large part to the absence of TD Roof due to the torn bicep that he suffered that is going to end his season. But props to Jake McCoy, man, because for a walk-on, it's not easy to get that high on the depth chart at any point, regardless of the reason. Couple other guys I will shout out. I think we all kind of took it for granted that Marcus Stripling was going to start at defensive end, and I think he's still going to play quite a bit. I think that's pretty undeniable. But props to Reggie Grimes for winning that job opposite Ethan Downs. We always kind of knew Downs was locked in as the starter, but for Grimes to get the nod opposite him, I think is big for the rising junior. And how about the leap that Kendall Dennis has made all the way into the 2 deep? After, I mean, and I asked around about that kid last fall because I just hadn't heard anything about him. He hadn't been shooting out. I was like, what is the deal with Kendall Dennis? And at the time, I was simply told, look, he's just not very good right now. There are walk-ons that are higher on the pecking order at cornerback than Kendall Dennis. He is running with the scout team. And to this day, Brandon, he has never played a down for Oklahoma in a game. It's not that he hasn't ever played a meaningful down. No, he has not yet played a down.
I thought he played last year or early. I thought he played against Nebraska or somebody last year early on.
No, I don't believe so. I believe when
I almost feel like I positive I felt he was out there. He played corner, I thought, or where it was nickel or something like that last year. I could be wrong, but I thought he did.
Yeah, no. So I just double checked here. He did not play at all last year.
Okay.
So redshirted in 2020, did not play at all last year. So this is a guy that when he sees the field on Saturday against UTEP, it will be the first game action he's ever seen as an Oklahoma Sooner.
Good for him. Good for him.
For him to get to this point, man, from where he was a year ago to where he is today, that is one of the most remarkable. That has to be considered one of the most remarkable off seasons for any player across this entire roster. And you can say the same about a couple of other defensive backs. We already talked about Justin Harrington. Jaden Davis is going to start opposite Woody Washington. Tip of the cap to him for beating out some really experienced guys such as DJ Graham and CJ Colden and some really physically intriguing and exciting guys in Joshua Eaton and Kenai Walker. So I think those are the things that stand out the most to me when I look at this thing top to bottom. I will be curious to see who's returning punts and kicks for the Sooners come week 1, because there was no starter. There was no one starter listed. We got 2 oars. So we got 3 guys that could handle return duties, both with the kick return unit and the punt return unit.
So if I was going to place a bet on the punt return, I'm going to say Marvin Mims and LV Bunkley Shelton are going to be your punt
Agreed.
returners mostly. As far as kick return, I'm going to go Marcus Major and Jalil Farouk. I think Billy Bowman is good enough, fast enough, and talented enough. It's, do they want to risk safety position where they're minimal as far as depth goes, as far as experience depth goes at that. So I think that is going to be, I think that's how they'll play it out. But as far, I'm with you. I think it's interesting. There's like 18 freshmen on the depth chart. 18 freshmen. That shows you how good 21 and 22, because some of them are red shirts, some of them are true freshmen, how good those two classes were as far as talent goes. Like they were, so that was some good recruiting. Got to give Muleshoe credit there because yeah, set Venables up pretty well as far as talent goes. Experience, no. Talent, yes. Venables capped it off with a really good 2022 class, some really good transfers, and that's what you're seeing in this obvious depth chart that we're talking about right now. There's a guy that we haven't talked a whole lot about that for some odd reason every year we don't, and then he comes out and he'll have 250, 300 yards receiving every year. Trevon West. Like we never talk about him, and yet he's always there. He's always there. He's third behind Theo Weiss and Jaden Gibson. I think he'll play. He's got a lot of speed. He's not the biggest. He's not the strongest guy, but he makes plays. He's always made plays when he's been out there. Every time he's got a chance to touch the ball, something good has happened in his career. If you look back at it, like it's never not been like a 10, 15-yard play. So he's a guy I like a lot. Do I think he's going to play over Theo Weiss and Jaden Gibson? Heck no. Those guys are special. Theo Weiss, I think, is going to have a really good season. I think it's because he feels like he's got a freshman nipping at his heels that he has to have a good season. I think, iron sharpens iron is such a cliche thing, but it's so true. And when you're getting pushed by talented freshmen, all you can do is keep pushing yourself, because if you don't, you're going to lose your spot. And I think that's where Oklahoma's at. I think that's how you get to that national title contending place as a program, is you have those deep, strong competitions at each and every position. And I think that's where Oklahoma's at right now. I don't think that, I'm not saying they're going to compete for a national title or anything, folks. So don't go spinning my words. I'm just saying they're getting to that point to where it's more of a, oh, this guy's already set the position that they don't have to do. That's kind of like the mentality they had on the last regime. These guys were set. They weren't going to get beat out. And so you saw a lot of lax mentality sometimes in their attitudes, not showing up for strength and conditioning and not really getting dinged for it or punished for it. I think that's another thing. So any little thing, and Venables said this yesterday. He said, all through the season is going to be a competition. Just because you're starting week 1 doesn't mean you're going to start week 2. We never heard that from the last regime, did we? Never heard that type of talk. If they were the starter, they were going to start. So I found that interesting. I think, honestly, I think we heard so much good of Marcus Stripling, right? All spring, all summer, all fall. Chavis came out during media day and just spoke glowingly about Stripling. When we got to talk to Venables, even week 2, he spoke of Marcus Stripling and how good he's doing. We didn't hear about R. Mason Thomas from the coaches until last week, but we had been reporting how good he's been doing for like a month now. And so and we reported all summer as well, just how good he's been doing. He's not the heaviest. He's at like 222 or something like that.
222. Yeah.
Yeah.
Light.
So he's
Nick
light,
Benito.
but he plays strong, and I think that's something Venable has made note of, is how strong he plays. And the fact that Marcus Stripling is with an oar next to R. Mason Thomas, to me, that was the most shocking thing on the thing. And it's not because we knew R. Mason Thomas was good. We knew he was really good. It's because we heard all the great things of Marcus Stripling too. So you wouldn't assume there would be an or. You would assume he would be third string, and that would be it. No, he's second string. It's Marcus Stripling or R. Mason Thomas.
I guess that didn't even dawn on me, really, because I paid it on the other side. He's also listed as an or, R. Mason Thomas is. He's listed as an or with Jonah Laulu. And that was the one that caught my attention. And that's why it made sense to me. But I completely spaced on the fact that R. Mason Thomas is listed as an or with Marcus Stripling, which says a lot about the kid, man. And again, if you were a VIP on OUinsider.com, this is far from the first you are hearing about how good R. Mason Thomas is and has the potential to be, and how impressive he has been throughout fall camp. But man, you got to think at this point, that dude's going to play quite a bit in year one.
Yep. And Grayson Halton, I think a lot of people are shocked to see that. But again, VIP members, we talked about him all fall camp of how good he was doing. Like, he came in guns blazing. His dad has been so proud of him. His dad's a really, really good guy, by the way. Just so proud of him. You know, like because he's a voice on the spaces that we've done, where he'll DM you. He's got a nonprofit that he likes to do for children as well. So he's just an unbelievable he's an unbelievable guy, and just very proud of his kids. So and he has every right to be. I mean, that to me was huge to see Grayson Halton listed on that depth chart ahead of some really good players. And that to me shows you the talent they've been bringing in. I think that was one of him and R. Mason Thomas are probably the most underrated finds that Venables found when he first showed up and flipped, mind you. He flipped both of them.
Yeah. Well, and Grayson Halton was going to flip somewhere, right? He and Oregon were kind of on the outs, it seemed, and Oklahoma was the beneficiary there. But man, I remember flipping on R. Mason Thomas's tape after Oklahoma offered him, and I've mentioned this before, but he was committed to Iowa State at the time. And the thing I thought watching this tape is, how on earth is everybody going to let this kid go to Iowa State? Because, and Iowa State's a fine program, but they're not an elite program. R. Mason Thomas had some elite tape. It was not that hard to foresee. That dude was going to be a player quickly at the next level.
Yep. No, 100%, man. He is. He's going to be special. I think lastly for me, we got to talk about the Cheetah position, because everybody wants to talk about the Cheetah position with Justin Harrington and Deshaun White. Guys, Deshaun White is going to play base like that. When they're out in base coverage, you're going to see Deshaun White out. If they get out in spread, if they get out in any sort of formation where there's multiple things that have to be covered in space, you're going to see Justin Harrington like that. I think as the season goes, you're going to see more and more of Justin Harrington, just because of the player he can be. And that's not, I'm not saying anything about Deshaun White, because I think Deshaun White will end up at least on a roster in the NFL. Like, I think he will. He's a good player. Harrington has a chance to be a freak. Like, I asked people the other day, I said, I asked somebody that would know. I'll just put it like that. Around the program all the time, very entrenched in the program. And I said, hey, what do you think of Justin Harrington? What do you think of his draft status? Like, if he was to stick it out and come back for his super senior year, what do you think of him? And he said he has a chance to be between a first and a fourth round pick, depending on how he progresses. I said, interesting. That person also thinks Billy Bowman's going to be a first rounder. And they think he has a chance to be downright special. And I trust this person. I promise you, I trust this person. So, yeah, that I thought was an interesting take. And you can see the talent both those guys have. The way that Venables and Brandon Hall and Valai speak of those two, they just glow when you bring them up. They love them. And to get BV in particular to say things the way he does about Harrington and Billy Bowman, they've got to be doing something really right to do that. And I was told that Billy Bowman will, after every practice, has like a list of questions, whether it's the next day or whether it's on the phone, whether it's whoever he wants to call or has to call. He's calling to find out whoever it is that can help him, what he needed to do to get better that practice and what he messed up most on after everybody's watched the film. And he makes note of it and he tries to correct it. They say he is downright, he's a coach's kid. He's a coach's kid with all that ability. That's scary. That ought to scare the Big 12, honestly. Honestly. I think you look like you fell asleep, but I think you froze. If you want to fall asleep, go for it.
No, I definitely did freeze. It's never a very flattering freeze frame either.
Right. All right. Real quickly before we get out of here, let's talk a little recruiting. We'll go through the schedule next week. I think we all know that the first two games, it is what it is. It's Kent State and UTEP. So we'll go through after this week's game. We'll go through the schedule next week, game by game. Parker and I will break this down, but he's got to go do radio too. So we're going to get on with this. Real quickly, recruiting. I just dropped a crystal ball on David Hicks, folks.
You don't say. Insider.
So I get a call this morning from Steve Wiltfong, and he goes, "Hey man, you know all the stuff you told me yesterday and you reported on your board. Are you ready to drop a crystal ball? Because if you are, I am. From what I've just been told too." He went and checked around with other people. Called me this morning. I said, "Yeah, I'll put it in." So I put it in, and he followed me right afterwards. And if you look at the timestamp, it's like we put it in the same time, but he waited for me to put it in to put his in, and then and I put it in while we were on the phone together, and then yeah, folks, I'm not going to go real deep into the David Hicks stuff here because I think that does an injustice to our VIP members, but it's trending. And it's trending Oklahoma right now. And if things move the way we think it's going to move, in the timetable we think it could move, talk about a win. Now, when I talk to A&M people, it's like A&M feel like, look at the depth chart A&M has. It's like one person said, doesn't really move the needle for A&M right now. I don't know if I buy that. But
I definitely don't buy that because I don't think there's a program in college football that David Hicks wouldn't move the needle for, truly.
Right? No, facts. So I think it has to do with, now, I'll say this. They have every reason to be confident in their depth. Like every reason to feel good about their depth. But come on. It's going to move the needle. It's the number one defensive tackle in the country. That moves any needle of any program, like you said, Parker. But yeah, it's trending really well. Another guy that I'm going to let Parker talk about, Malachi Coleman.
Yeah, how about that one?
Things are looking a little good for the old Sooners on that. I'm telling everybody this could go ahead. Yeah. Well, real quick, I'm telling everybody this could be we go off point totals on 24/7. Parker and I did the math, or I did the math when Parker and I were on the phone the other day. If they land who we expect them to land, it's at least 306. If they land a few more, it's over 310. And we're talking about flips.
I remember answering
backfield.
Yeah, I remember answering a question on the OU Insider VIP board about where this class, and it was probably a month back, about where this class could ultimately be ranked and what the ceiling is. And my answer was, I think the ceiling largely depends on two guys in particular, DJ Hicks and Malachi Coleman, because Those were the heat checks at the time, and still are for this staff. So if you get DJ Hicks, and at this point, Steve, Brandon, and I all have crystal balls in for DJ Hicks to Oklahoma. Great. You're 1 for 2 at the very least. How can I put this? In talking to folks in the know that are up to speed and highly invested in the recruitment of Malachi Coleman, it seems as though Scott Frost might have onside kicked the Malachi Coleman recruitment right into Oklahoma's lap this past weekend.
Pun intended.
Pun fully intended. Yeah, because at this point, here's what I'm gonna say about this recruitment. I'm gonna hold off on entering a crystal ball, and I'm gonna hold off on making any final prediction on this recruitment until at least September 17th, because there is a scenario in which Scott Frost can still keep this thing afloat. And that scenario is Nebraska beats Oklahoma. That has to happen. But if Nebraska doesn't beat Oklahoma, I think the ship sets sail, and it sets sail for Norman, Oklahoma in the recruitment of Malachi Coleman, because right now it looks for all the world like he's going to be either a Husker or a Sooner. And if he's not a Husker, he's going to be a Sooner. And it doesn't look like he's going to be a Husker right now, at least not the way that program is headed under the leadership of Scott Frost, because I don't know if there's anybody left that expects the Huskers head coach to still hold his post at season's end. It seems as though he kind of sealed his fate against Northwestern. It seems to be a question of when, not if, at this point.
Yeah.
And so if Nebraska doesn't salvage this thing and salvage it quickly, Malachi Coleman isn't going to wait for things to turn around in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Nope.
He's not. And he's set. This is the one thing he has maintained throughout the entirety of his recruitment is, I want to go somewhere I can win. And if that is not Nebraska, that is going to be Oklahoma, the way things look right now. And look, he's going to take an official visit to USC. He's going to take an official visit to Ole Miss. I'm not super high on either of those programs' chances right now, but they could surprise him. They could impress him. They could elbow their way into this recruitment. But right now, as I've said for quite some time, I still maintain that if Malachi Coleman is not a Husker, he will be a Sooner. And right now, based on the direction of Nebraska's season, I am more confident that he will be a Sooner than I am that he will be a Husker. That's where things sit. And you were talking about yet another top 100 national prospect, the number 76 player in the 24/7 Sports composite, the number 1 player in the state of Nebraska. That is gravy for this recruiting class if you're able to lock down that kid. And that also would mean that 3 of Joe John Finley's 4 signees in his 2 seasons at Oklahoma will have come from the state of Nebraska.
That to me is hilarious, by the way. That just has to just chap the hides of every Nebraska fan, by the way. You know it does, especially the Caden Helms and Malachi Coleman situation. I've been on their boards. It does chap their hide. They're pissed. Like, they are not happy. But they feel like if they go and they hire somebody that is up to snuff after they get rid of Scott Frost, no matter where Coleman commits, he would flip to them, which that's a fair question to ask later on down the line. But I don't know that he would. I think at that point, no matter how diehard his family is for Nebraska, you just have to know that if OU ends up going 11-1, 10-2, there's no way you look at that and go, yeah, I think I'm going to go play for this dude that we don't even know if he's going to win here in Nebraska, because nobody's won in Nebraska in the last decade and a half. So, I mean, like, I don't know. I look, you have Tassilia Kana. You know, Steve Wiltfong wrote on VIP board today, like, Oklahoma is trending for all these guys. And I think Oklahoma is recruiting at an Alabama level right now. I said it. I said what I just said. But they are. If they end up landing Hicks, Coleman, Renaud, Cecilia Kana, they go and they offer Fluellen, which I'm going to have a note on that later on. They haven't offered Rowan Fluellen. I don't know if they're going to yet. It's something I'm gonna put up on the board and have some notes on. He's a safety committed to TCU. Even if they do that, maybe they go and get Flip Peyton Bowen. Like they're looking to be like above 310 in the final with 39 or 29 commits. And by the way, they're in it with Samson Okunlola. Like I've reported that. 5-star offensive lineman. I reported that for the last 4 months that he intends to take an official visit to Oklahoma.
Which at that point, if the Sooners get Samson Okunlola,
it's just laughable at that point.
I'm just going to crystal ball every single one of their top targets in the class of 2024, because at that point, who is Oklahoma not getting?
No, you're right, because it's just like, dude, this is what it felt like, like this is what fans are saying right now. This is and what probably the people that covered Alabama and Texas A&M the last few years. This is what it feels like. It's just like you're laughing at everything because it's like, yeah, they're gonna get that guy. People just have so. It's gotten to the point that Steve Wiltfong, who is like the most level-headed person I know, is like, yeah, if Oklahoma's going after, probably gonna get him. Like he's starting to feel that way, and it's just turning people's heads. Nobody expected it this fast. And I think between Marcus Freeman, Nick Saban, Brent Venables, Dabo Sweeney, Jimbo Fisher, and obviously Ryan,
Ryan Day,
Ohio State's Ryan Day, and oh my gosh, Georgia. I just went
Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart, dude. I'm like going blank here. Kirby Smart and Ryan Day, like all those guys. There's 7 coaches in the country that if they're on them, they're probably getting them. And Brent Venables is on that list. Like it's become that now. And if Oklahoma wins, folks, if you think 2023 was good, 2024 has a chance to be downright special because they have 2 of the top 5 D linemen in 24, either from Oklahoma or living in Oklahoma.
Well, and just think about how
that's just easy. That's just easy money.
How drastically has the narrative shifted over the last 8 months? Because the conventional wisdom would suggest, right? Like knowing what we know about Oklahoma in the past and having experienced the things that we have experienced, conventional wisdom would suggest that Derek LeBlanc should not be a Sooner. Makari Vickers should not be a Sooner. Colton Vasek should absolutely not be a Sooner. There's no way Malachi Coleman or DJ Hicks should be Sooners. I mean, you can go down the list. Josiah Wagner shouldn't be a Sooner. This coaching staff is doing things at the University of Oklahoma that have never been done before in the modern recruiting era. And they're doing it in year 1. And it just gets more and more impressive by the week.
No, you're right. I mean, there's a few other players that, I'm going to throw out here real quick that I don't feel should be Sooners if you were going off of what we previously have known at Oklahoma. And I would Dalen Smothers, Keon Brown, Phil Picciotti, Logan Howland. Like these dudes aren't Caleb Spencer. By the way, let's talk about Caleb Spencer real quick.
The next Isaiah Simmons per Andrew Ivins.
Yeah, that goes down to Florida. I can't remember what program they were playing and flat out dominates the game. Folks, he turns to Andrew Ivins during a field goal and said in the rest of the media that were in the end zone and says, "Get your cameras out. I'm about to block this field goal." And he does it. And he does it. And we're talking about a dude that doesn't talk to anybody. Like he's so quiet. He's very much David Hicks. David Hicks is very quiet, very reserved, very to himself. One of the nicest kids you will ever meet. Love his family to death. His dad is about as good as they come. Like David Hicks Sr. and I are friends. Like he's a good guy. And they're both very reserved when they're not on the football field, but they put that helmet on and they're just become this extrovert person from being this introvert person every other day of the week except for Friday. And that's just who they are. Like during the game of David Hicks, real quick, I'm walking by him and he pulls me. He's Drumm, come here. And so I walk over there. I'm limping over there at that time because my knee, I just re-aggravated my ligament, my knee that I'd torn. And I'm fighting through it, folks, fighting through it all the way. But so he pulls me. He's like, man, look, have you seen them been holding me all game? And he still, by the way, has like 3 sacks. He's demolished the quarterback almost every play. They're doing everything they can not to protect the quarterback. Their quarterback, the fact that he was walking at the end of the game after what David Hicks did to him was shocking. And so I was like, yeah, man, I seen it. I said, I also saw that personal foul they called on me. He's like, man, that was crap. He goes, all I did was hit the quarterback. I didn't do anything wrong. I was like, no, you really didn't. He goes, no, I'm pissed. He goes, watch this. I'm going to T1 off for you. I'm going to T1 off for you on the next drive. I said, all right, cool. So I go walk over there, start talking to Sam Spiegelman and a couple other guys, Marshall, Levinson, and there were several other guys from On 3 there. And so we're talking, and I was telling the story that I just said to you all. And he has a sack, and he looks over to me, and he points at me and gives a thumbs down, like he just because he did it, because he knew it was hilarious. And then literally the next drive, he scores a touchdown too, and like walks up to me and just like pats me right on the butt. So I told you, like that is just that's just who he is. Like if he's not on the football field, very introvert kid, like not real out, not real loud, not anything. But on the football field, that helmet, he plays to the crowd. He's very, very dramatic on everything. Like if he makes a play, he's out there. If he misses, he's jumping up and down, slapping his head, just very angry. Such a competitive guy. And he fits Venables. David Hicks fits Venables to a T. To a T. So, anyways, folks, I think that's going to do it. I think we've talked enough, and Parker's got to go do some radio. But if you're not a member of OU Insider, we've said it earlier, and we'll say it again. 75% off right now. 75% off. $26. Get you 1 year of OU Insider. All VIP access across 24/7 Sports. You get all the access to Steve Wiltfong. You get myself. You get myself, Parker. You get Joey. You get Brian Bishop. You get whoever. I mean, it doesn't matter. Greg Biggins, Brandon Huffman, Brian Doan, Andrew Ivins, like all of our great national guys that are on our board every day for you all. You get it. After the first year, you also get Paramount Plus for free. You stay with us for a year, you get Paramount Plus for free. That's like $250 in value. You'll have to pay the full price after the promo's over. You can't do the promo again. But dude, it is so worth it. 1 year of OU Insider for $26 and all of 247 Sports or 24/7 Sports, and you get Paramount Plus after the first year. So if your card gets charged $75 or $100, whatever it is total, I can't remember what it is total, you're still getting Paramount Plus. You go up to the top right setting, click, you go to Paramount, you type all this stuff in, boom, you get it for free. $250 in value for around $100 after the first year. That is an amazing deal. You get all CBS, you get all the sports that Paramount Plus has, all the movies, all that. It is worth it. It is worth it. I use it. Parker uses it. Everybody that I know on our board uses it that have been members for more than a year, and they absolutely love it. And guess what? Top Gun Maverick's going to be streaming on there pretty soon. So was 1932 from another prequel to Yellowstone. You'll get 1831, the other Yellowstone one. You get Tulsa Kings. You get the one with Jeremy Renner, the jail cell movie, the show that's amazing. You get all that stuff. $26 for the first year. Then afterwards, you get Paramount Plus. Give us a shot. Give us a try. If you don't want to do that, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. I promise you, it is worth it. Parker, what's your prediction real quick on the game score?
51-10 is, I think, what I said last night. So I'll stick with that. 51-10.
Okay.
OU wins, OU covers.
I'm going to go 55-13. So no, 55-10. I'll go 55-10. I think I was rounding yours, actually. I think I said 55-13 the other day, but I'm going to go 55-10. I think that's probably more likely. May only be 7, to be honest, but I'll go 10. I'll give him another 3 points. Anyways, all right, that's going to do it for Parker Thune. My name is Brandon Drumm. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the OU Insider Under the Visor Students podcast. You guys have a blessed day. Can't wait to see you all for the post-game podcast later on this week.